I remade the opening scene from Detroit Become Human in a 1-bit style. Sort of.
I'm Xanderwood. I make indie games and tutorials on game development. I also play your indie games every week on my channel. Make sure you subscribe and click that bell icon so you never miss a video.
I took part in the Wowie
Game Jam
from Jonas Tyroller. The theme was...
It is... Failure is... progress.
Or whatever else I wanted to do.
You can do whatever you want. You don't even have to follow the topic at all if you don't want.
Why is it that as soon as you're too far into a game jam to turn back, you come up with a bazillion better ideas for the theme than the one you initially picked? Seriously, failure is progress. How about an exercise-inspired game where failing to lift a weight makes you stronger the next try? What about a game where you die and your dead corpse stays in place on the screen as an object to help you overcome future challenges? Anyway, looking at everyone else's wonderful games always makes me... In the last game jam I entered, I played a game made by Picoso. The theme was less is more, and it really inspired me to make a 1-bit game, as I wanted to see what I could make when graphics were kept simple, especially as I only had 72 hours.
It's like having a job working 24/7 for 2 days on the trot.
As a game developer coming from an art background, I always spend way too much time on the artwork, because that's where I feel most comfortable. It's what nearly stopped me from finishing my Vim Jam game. I mean, look at all the detail on this arcade scene. You can download these art assets from my itch page, where you can name your own price. Literally. If you haven't played or heard of the game Detroit Become Human by Quantic Games, then I would strongly urge you to check it out. It is easily one of my favourite games of all time. They also made a game called Heavy Rain, which is...
Not for me.
What was your son wearing when he disappeared? He was wearing a coat. A beige coat.
Anyway, onto my game entry. My idea was to create a game where you were placed in a situation where you had to make choices, and those choices would have consequences, but would also give you information. I used androids because as a human character, dying would mean the end, and I couldn't think of a plausible way to reintroduce the character without the player having to restart the level. With androids, the data they acquire could be stored for the next android to come along and pick up the story without having to restart the game and thus make progress by failing. Also, because this was a story-driven game, I didn't want to bore the player by having to redo bits of the same dialogue sequence over and over. I made all the art for the game using the built-in pixel editor inside Construct 3, and the music was composed from scratch by my dad, who I may have already mentioned has a recording studio in his bedroom. I also reused some of the sound effects from my RPG game Orion's Throne. Without doubt, the hardest part of making this game was the dialogue system. Because there were multiple paths you could take to reach the end, and coupled with items and clues you could find that would give you alternative dialogue choices, my event sheet gave me a migraine every time I looked at it. I tried grouping bunches of possible conversations together, which helped a little, but in all honesty, I kept having to reread through each sequence of events to ensure all loose ends were tied up and there were no game-breaking bugs, which I'm not 100% sure there isn't. I changed the colour of the text to yellow if the dialogue option was something you'd uncovered through a previous turn, or if you found an item that could alter the course of the dialogue. The objective of the game is to engage in dialogue with the crazy android bomber and figure out a way to get close enough to them to defuse the bomb without triggering them to set the bomb off before you get there. There are multiple ways to fail, obviously along the way, but each time you do, you'll learn a little bit more about the suspect and what triggers them and what doesn't, and then that will give you, in turn, dialogue options that you can then use on the next attempt to get a little bit closer. If I break down the weekend into time chunks, I would say the art took me about 2 hours altogether. The sound took me around 1 hour to implement, and it took me 20 minutes or so to make the itch page nice and pretty. The rest of the 72 hours was writing the endless lines of paths of dialogue, rechecking and staring at a monitor idly for extended periods, just scratching my head. Would I make another dialogue-based meaningful choice game, I hear you ask? No. Now go check out my Meaningful Choice RPG devlog series. Thanks for watching, and thanks to my Patreon James Welch for supporting my Game Jeff journey. Xander out.